Welcome to You Rang, an Addams Family podcast where we talk about all things Addams Family, as well as wherever that kooky wind takes us. My name is Fivel Fox, aka Kylie, and my co-host is JohnPaul. We are currently going episode by episode of the original TV series. Won't you come in? Season 1, Episode 2, Morticia and the Psychiatrist.
Yes.
Initial thoughts, JohnPaul.
Again, this is another classic episode that I've seen a million times, and I forgot it was this early in the series.
I didn't realize it was number 2.
Yeah.
I feel like we're gonna be saying that with a lot of these. Like, it doesn't feel like it's so early in the season, but I guess there's only 3 seasons, so
That's the thing. It's surprisingly short for a show we know is always on when we were kids.
yeah, and you feel like you know every episode, so
Yeah.
it probably makes it feel like it's much more enduring than it is. Just like
There's not a lot of change in them.
like the original Star Trek is like that. I know.
Oh, yeah.
Like it feels like that ran for 10 years the way it's beloved.
I think that's just due to its episodic nature versus serialized storytelling.
Yeah, and that really works with this too.
Overall, I really enjoyed it. I think the reason it surprised me so much is because it shares a lot of themes from the first episode.
Yes, and I noticed, like I was telling you earlier, I was expecting to take maybe 1 page of notes. I ended up taking 3. And what was cool about this one, and we'll get into this later, is it inspired me to look up and dig in and do research on other stuff. And then I went down this rabbit hole. But I will say, before we go anywhere, every time that intro comes on, I never skip it. I always snap my fingers. And I can't help but sing along.
Yep.
Like, this is one of those that I will never skip the intro. In fact, I'll be honest with you, I'm not an intro skip person ever. Like, that's part of the experience for me.
Yeah, I think it depends on what it is for me. It's like if I'm like on a binge of Star Trek, like Voyager especially,
Yes,
I'll skip it just because I want to get to the episode.
I get
But
that.
otherwise, most of them, there's certain ones I can't ever.
I will say specifically Voyager, I can't skip that intro. It's gorgeous, and that might be my favorite opening score. There's this swell of the trumpet that comes in about the middle, and like it makes my heart like grow.
Yeah, another thing about it does sound like it does very soaring style.
Yes, it's beautiful. I love it.
It really does give you a sense of exploration.
Mm-hmm, and I love that, like, because it's a science ship. It's exploration. Right. And then, like, I was thinking about this last night when I was watching Murder, She Wrote too, and when I watched this, like, I want the intro because it's like my mental prep, like the mental trailer, like, here we go, like, settle in.
Welcome to another episode of TV and Psychology.
Yeah, we should look into that. It's like the 5 stages of watching TV.
Skipping the intro to finally, watching the credits every episode.
I feel like I gotta do that now, just because creators are left in the dust. I know those names won't actually mean anything to me, but I feel like if I run them across my eyes, I gave them something.
Never forgotten.
Yeah, exactly. You're a legend. Someone remembers you, or might remember you. I don't know. I tried.
Yes, DeLawrence, you, the best boy operator.
If anything, you'll find great names. So that's fun. Like they do,
some nepotism where there's like the grip, the second grip, the third grip are all cousins.
So many grips. The show has
Don't worry.
Grip.
I know the PA. I'll get you in.
Oh, another thing I started with this one in my notes is I have a Gomez arm kiss counter. And surprisingly, it only happened once in this episode.
I thought you were doing each individual kiss.
Oh, I feel like that's going to move too fast for my little brain. I was going to go I'm going to count it as every time he sweeps the arm or goes for the arm, even if she's
I get that.
Not this time. But I only had once this time.
So I want to know, when you're watching the intro or those scenes, is it me, or is John Aston incredibly magnetic?
Oh, right away. He's
Like
radiant.
I can't like whenever I'm looking at the backgrounds of the scene and he gets active, I can't help but just stare. Like, man, he's excited to be there.
Yeah. Like even in the intro when they're just standing together as a
Yeah.
family, that grin, like it's
Mhm.
captivating. Like he just sucks you in.
Which is
Like
of course so opposite of Morticia.
yeah, like he's just gleaming this passion, and Morticia is like this. I wouldn't say sullen because she's the opposite. She does not come off like morose to me. She comes off very calm.
Serene,
Serene.
yes.
Serene is the word. Yeah.
I mean, if I lived in the house, I'd be pretty serene too.
Oh hell yeah. They don't have
I
to
wouldn't
worry
worry
about.
about invaders or anything. Nothing.
If you're ever bored, you can go play the harpsichord or hang out with the African strangler.
As long as the puppeteers stick around.
Oh, what a great place. I'd never leave. What else? Okay.
But that really, that's what comes down to this episode is that Morticia shows a little bit more of her less serene self in this
Mm-hmm.
episode.
You're right. So in that first episode, we talked about how she is kind of the foundation of the family. She and
Yeah.
the biggest thing about her is her serene, her calm. And this one, we actually get to see. You're right. It's a Morticia episode. The motherly stress, the anxiety of being a mom.
And that's the fun thing. The whole thing is, of course, that Pugsley is doing things I would not allow in my house, will not happen under my roof. I'm becoming a Boy Scout and having a puppy.
So I know what they were going with here, and I do love, the counter with like the Boy Scouts and the baseball. I like the little things that signal like the joke, like, oh, he's playing with a bat, and everyone's like, oh, that's great. Bats are great. Bats are totally goss. Like, no, a baseball bat.
I thought that they did a good job with the keeping Pugsley still Pugsley. Like he didn't change his character. Maybe he just wasn't able to really show that range yet. But
Yeah,
even though he had the outfit and he had all these new hobbies, he still is excited about when they tied nooses and hung people.
exactly. It wasn't like he became a different kid and he was emotionally going through something. He just suddenly had new interests.
And that's it's funny because it's so opposite of the family.
Yeah.
He's still Pugsley. He's like, I'm fine. I don't know what your problem is.
I think too, something that I like how they handle this in general, and this is the thing that led me down the rabbit hole, is when this happens, they're not looking at it like it's necessarily a flaw in him or that like he's
Correct.
wrong or anything. It's just like this is a marker for is something off with him because it doesn't seem normal to his normal behavior.
Well, and they're looking to help him more
Yes.
than admonish him. And they keep saying they feel like failures. They keep feeling like they
Right.
went wrong. They
Yeah.
take responsibility.
Yeah. They keep yeah, and the thing about like, oh, what have we not done? What did we do too much of? Yeah, they're putting it
Mhm.
on themselves. There's none of this like he's the problem. It's just a thing that they have to solve together, and they're all committed to doing, even though those interests make them miserable.
In a bad way, not the good way.
Yeah, like you're true. You have to clarify that in this one because they'll use things like, "Isn't it gloomy?" and they just mean that's the best day ever.
Right. I mean, I love overcast days, but I agree.
Yeah, and I like so like they kind of go down this their I guess their approach is what I want to say. Their approach is Dr. Spock basically. And if you
Yes.
remember in the 50s like every TV show was referencing Dr. Spock. Every joke was a Dr. Spock joke.
And not the Star Trek one.
Yeah, the child raising Dr. Spock about putting in quality time, love, effort, patience, letting people feel things out and grow. And I'm watching that as they do this, like, okay, they give in to his interests, they encourage him, and then they also do things like, okay, was it not enough quality time? So Gomez takes him up to play trains with him.
And
And
he
then
just isn't feeling it.
yeah, he's not feeling it. He's not upset about it, and he's not saying, Dad, I don't like this. He's like, yeah, maybe later.
So, did you catch that it was the same crash footage from the first episode?
Yes.
Like that looks just like it. I'm kind of confused.
I'm wondering, like, I know model trains can be expensive.
Oh yeah,
they were probably less so back then, but they're expensive and maybe like they didn't need to, which I feel like is sad that they didn't crash the train every time. I feel like that would have been fun, but I can see why they didn't.
that would be my rider clause. I get to crash the train every episode.
Yes.
One of the things we're going to see a lot of reuse, a lot of corner cutting,
Yeah.
but I'm kind of looking forward to catching them.
Right.
And it's not something don't think a lot of shows did that. Maybe
No.
shows like Green Acres with a lot of B-roll footage, but can't
Yeah,
think of that ever.
that's true. I haven't really thought of it. The other place we would probably see that because it's such elaborate stuff is maybe the monsters, like
Sure,
with Spot.
yeah, they went where the Addams Family wouldn't in that one.
Yeah.
We should have seen more of their pets.
I did like that when Pugsley is playing with the dog. It's not that the dog is a problem. It's that Gomez says he sees it as boring and unimaginative. That's the
Yes.
problem. The
Oh,
dog is not, yeah, the dog's not
he's
inherently bad. It's just boring.
well. The problem is he's not going to grow up to be anything but a dog,
Yeah.
not like a werewolf or something. I love the implication there.
Yeah. So they just want, I love that they're like, we want our kids to be outside the box and think outside the box.
Yeah, instead of what you usually see is the kids, they get weird and they're, only coming outside the box in the shows. This time we're, of course, inverting that. And it's very much encouraged as a general parenting advice
Yeah.
to encourage your kids to just let them be who they are.
And that comes back again to like Dr. Spock. So I always knew like the references and who he was, but seeing it kind of, I guess, in action in the show, which is interesting because by the 60s, he had a lot of backlash from conservatives. So it's kind of perfect that the Addams family is using his methods because by this time it's kind of counterculture to go back to Dr. Spock and his affectionate, patient ways, right?
Yeah, the Mr. Rogers style.
Yeah. And so I did some research on Dr. Spock,
Yeah.
and he did get some initial backlash from feminists in the 70s. And then he took that as a time to like reflect and see how he needed to grow. And so through the 60s, all the way until he died in almost like 1998, he kept revising that book and
Yes.
included his activism, like for gay rights, for abortion, for AIDS help. What else? He was anti-war, anti-colonialism. He was an incredible man.
Oh yeah.
And I had no idea because to me, he was always just like, oh, the Dr. Spock book joke. And then
Right.
I saw it here and I was like, how far did they really go down this hole? And then I was so impressed. So that was really fun for me.
It is an interesting rabbit hole to go down, and it's was so ubiquitous in the 80s and 90s. I'd always see those books everywhere I went. It
Mm-hmm.
was always, even pharmacies and stuff used to have them. And I didn't really look into that when I was going to have a kid. It never came up, but little passages, phrases did. And they were all that very much treating a child like not like a baby, not always treat them like you want to be treated.
Yeah, they are their own person.
Right.
And you have to respect that and encourage that. And
And
so,
that's got to be something that the writers were working on because it's very much along the lines. It's a lack of hard discipline.
yeah,
It's and getting on their level, and that's what constantly we're going to see in the entire series.
the Dr. Spock thing is a perfect fit for the Addams family because they are inherently more tolerant and accepting and they embrace all those things.
Yeah, we love you because you're different. We love you
Yes,
because you're you. You're you.
exactly. Yeah, that's what we love is that you're you, not necessarily specific things, but because you are who you are. And like a side note, things I was noticing, Pugsley and Wednesday are so polite. They have the best manners. They're the nicest kids.
I caught that too. I was like, they're very much of the like the 50s mythological, seen but never heard children for the most part, unless the
Yeah.
plot dictates it. They're otherwise
Yeah.
very, very, again, calm kids. And yes, sir, no, sir, thank you. But
Yeah. So this idea that like, oh, they're counterculture, but how are they so nice and they're not rebellious? Because
that's the
that,
problem.
yeah, that's it's a terrible stereotype that like, if you lead with love, you're gonna have, rambunctious, kids who don't listen. Like I feel
Right.
like
Because
it's the we've learned. You and I believe the opposite.
oh, absolutely. I've always believed in listening to the kids as well as talking to them. And that's again what was featured when, his dad put the hat on and tried to see things from Pugsley's perspective.
That was such a beautiful moment. That like
That
even
smile.
though yeah, like as John Aston Gomez always does, he went all in.
Yeah.
You know, he was there. He met him where his son was, and that's such a beautiful.
And I was impressed. I thought in those scenes, I believed Pugsley was just a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I never felt that he was trying to act like an Addams or like a normal kid, quote unquote,
Right. It
but
didn't.
he
Yeah.
felt real. Yeah.
Yeah, he felt real. Yeah, it felt very natural. It didn't feel like his character was rebelling. It felt like his character was just exploring something new.
Yeah. Basically, just, I mean, I think it was just him being himself at that point. I'm a kid. I'm just going to be a kid. Just stand here.
Coming back to Morticia and Gomez, I love that like we talked about how it was their relationship is kind of scandalous for the time, the things that they're showing.
Yes.
This one was even more on that. Did you see them combing each other's hair and having like this sexy innuendo for a family show?
Well, even right in the beginning where they go, let's go upstairs. And
Yes, that
it's like,
too.
wow, those looks, I didn't see those eyes.
I know it was wonderful. And
And again, it shows the characters very appreciative of each other, just madly in love.
yes, and it's not just in like the innuendo and the way they're attracted to each other. She's making a point like when they're stressed, she's going to spend time with him and watch him do his trades.
Yeah, that's an idea of romance there.
Yeah,
I mean, blowing up trains alone is pretty romantic, but
I have to agree. And it's not like a big part of this episode, but they do a lot of parallel play, which I think is one of the most beautiful aspects of a great healthy relationship.
that's become I never had word for that, but that's become something I am so appreciative of having a definition for because it's what me and my friends usually do. We all just kind of do our own things together, which I
Yeah.
think is awesome. And I love that they show that in there. There's no, why aren't you doing this with me? It's like, I'm going to sew and you can play with an octopus.
Yep. Speaking of octopus, that octopus dress was fabulous.
Yes. I was like, oh my God.
I like stopped, I paused, and then I took a picture of it and I like sent it to people. I'm like, look at this dress.
I want
Fashion
this
has gone
dress.
fashion has gone backwards. Why aren't we making more octopus themed clothes?
Right, let's be real. Morticia is fashion.
Yeah,
So
she is.
she's the Moira of the show.
Like
I
when
want to see it in color. I really am curious what color that was.
so a thing that I read is I don't know if you've seen this too. Um, to get those darker because they knew it was going to be in black and white,
Yes.
and they wanted those grays and blacks. The best part, the easiest way to show that on the camera in a black and white film is deep reds and pinks.
Ooh,
So
that's
if
kind of
you
cool.
if you Google it, I think you can find. I found it once. In fact, if I find it, I'll just send it to you later. The actual set, and it's all pink and red, and it's like very vibrant. It's the opposite of what you would expect. But because they were accounting for the black and white film, that's what they did. And then later, I know it ended in season 3, but they were preparing for season 4,
Hmm.
and they were supposed to move to color in season 4 and changing the entire set.
And I think
Um,
that's where we got in the later Addams Family. We got them finally in color, but it was a very different. It was obviously a different set by that point.
yeah, and because the initial one was made for black and white TVs,
Yeah.
which I thought was super cool. I had no idea. I just would have assumed that it didn't matter what color they had, and it would
Yeah.
just appear in black and white. But apparently, yeah, those reds and pinks really lean into it.
That's color science I am not aware of.
I had no idea about it until
Yeah.
I was reading about this stuff on the background. I love their behind the scenes stuff because I didn't realize, like, I mean, I know a lot of work goes into TV, and this is like it's supposed to be a typical family sitcom, but because they have these little, it's so different and unique that they have to come up with these different things for this family specifically.
You
Like,
gotta wonder how many things they had to invent for the special effects at the time, too.
right. Yeah. They're always making concoctions and stuff. Oh, and then the kitty, the
Yes.
the lion, I know the kids were not allowed on set when they would film stuff.
No snacks. No snacks allowed.
But that's a real lion.
Yeah.
And then the polar bear is
Hmm.
actually a real bear, but they wanted it to be black, so they took a white polar bear that was taxidermied and painted it black.
Okay. I did not know that.
It's wild. So I
That is
guess
some
like
wild stuff.
the kids went on the behind the scenes commentary, talked about like sitting underneath it, and just the sheer size of a real polar bear really sinks in, and then the imagining that this thing used to actually be real.
Until we start thinking about that it's all in pastel and is like the Easter Bunny went crazy in the room.
Right? I wish they would have gave us, since we didn't get to see the color version of this show. Here was like one episode of what it looked like without the black and white. And you can see all the pink, all the red, all the crazy colors. And it's only them in black.
On the amount of makeup that a lot of them had to wear too to show off the way they did.
Oh yeah.
I could really see John Aston's mascara in this episode.
Very much so.
It it seemed really, really thick.
Thick and very like I was looking at it, I was like, those are some great lashes and eyeliner. It felt very like 80s scene.
Yeah. I was like, wow, that's maybe that's why we're all attracted to him, and he's just so enthralling with his
Right?
eyelashes.
You just set the standard for glam rock 80s to come. Like they're all just trying to be as sexy as John Ass.
Well, we can't. Well, that won't happen.
Never. From this show to every single thing he was in, even like in Murder She Wrote when he was always like playing the bad guy. Oh, he was wonderful.
I always liked him whenever he would show up in like things like Gremlins, Joe Dante stuff, or
Oh, hell yeah.
it was just I was like, wait a minute, that's Gomez.
Did you notice that Fester is actually kind of open to trying to accept these things? Especially like with the dog. He's like, no, I could get used to this.
So that's what's weird about Fester. He keeps bouncing back and forth in this episode, like, oh, this is great. Oh, it's bad. Oh, it's great.
I wonder if I just wanted to like build a background for Fester, I would say that maybe he went through this period and remembers it, and people weren't so lenient with him.
And you got to wonder what the intended allegory is there,
Yeah,
because I think it's a lot of like the music and stuff that kids were listening to at the time, maybe being more of a mod or greaser type.
right. There is a
So,
Greaser episode. I love that one.
mhm.
I love, love, love that one. I can't wait till we get to it. That has such a beautiful message. But we're kind of hitting it here too,
Right. And I think it's just going to be a repeating theme through the whole thing.
pretty much. It another,
I do like that we got a really nice thank you thing. Just I love
yes,
her intonation there.
I do. I know they're the butler and the helpers, but it feels like a family.
It does bother me a little bit. I'm trying to figure out who Thing is when Lurch is on the harpsichord.
Oh, that's right. Because it's not. That's right. I forgot. He's usually both. How did that
Right.
work? I,
Magic.
that's my dream job. I want to be stand-in thing.
And in stunt hand.
Yeah, stunt hand sounds amazing. Like make a whole career out of just stunt hand. I'd wear a glove everywhere because my hand is so important.
Thing is quite valuable.
Yeah, like we were talking about earlier, it's kind of like the simplest iconic imagery of the Addams family.
Yeah, it's the first thing you think of, or maybe cousin it, a
Hmm.
light bulb, depending
The
what
light bulb
generation you're from.
infester. Yeah,
I think I wonder if that should be a survey we should put online too. With what do you think of? Like, what's your generation? What do you think of? Do
that's
they
yeah.
first think of Tim Curry if they're really, really young? Yikes.
As a
Like,
poll.
one of my first things I think of when I think of Addams Family is Fester's Quest for Nintendo.
Oh, interesting.
And it is one of those games that captures, I guess, some of the style and some of the look of it, but really has nothing to do with Addams Family. So that's always fun.
Yeah,
I think we saw a lot of that too as they kept trying to reboot the series and bring things back. And I think this is one of the episodes that was remade in the 90s
I
in
have
the
not. I haven't watched
newer
that
Addams
one
Family.
recently. Yeah, I haven't watched that recently enough to recall. It
I
would
mean,
be
that'll be an interesting era when we get
yeah,
up there.
right. Because they're gonna try and like pay homage, but also make their own thing, which I know it also didn't do well. So.
I'm really curious of how they could approach this now with all of these ideas of him being Troop 999, haha.
I looked
Um,
that up to see if like that was a joke because it's an upside down 666.
right.
But There's like all kinds of Troop 999s. So
See,
I
I thought
looked
it
at
was because it was upside down, like an
that's what
upside
I
thing.
thought too. And I
Huh.
looked it up just to make sure. Nope. I can give you a long list of many Troop 999s, which I don't know if I need this information, but I'll probably remember it forever.
That'll be the last thing you remember someday. Like, I think I remember this, how many troops there are and where they are located. But that's one thing I want to know if they'll, as we progress on to the other shows, and when they repeat these themes, do they become more cynical? Like, I can't imagine a Addams Family episode like this right now
No, you're right.
because they're so wholesome, and we're very much in this era of cynical. Everything's terrible, and if it's not, it's ironically terrible or good.
Hmm.
Or
Yeah. And I think this is why this remains my favorite
yeah,
because we get like, because this is what I feel like, my horror creepy personality is. It's actually like creepy, but bubbles and rainbows. Like, I feel like I enjoy and I chase down very wholesome things, but within my little macabre, creepy setting. And it's at the Addams Family is a perfect attraction to me.
I can definitely see that. I love horror comedy, and
Mm-hmm.
this definitely fits. This
Yes.
fits the positive messages somehow, and in the midst of everything else that was happening at the time, it's just interesting to see with the counterculture and everything of how they're more like hippies, but
Mm-hmm.
not, which is
Right.
really weird.
It's kind of like, yeah, because we talk about, and I know we're gonna hit this every time. The show itself is like more wholesome than other TV families at the time.
Right. It's just once again funny, and seeing how it played and seeing how the things they chose to use for a child being them being bad is like sports and all those things that nerds
Hmm.
already, don't like. It's
I love how that works with the psychiatrist they bring. He
yes.
he thinks that they are overindulging and they're wearing those clothes for because he's gone dark, and I love that he does not even figure it out until the very
No.
very end when that stuff comes flying out of the house, which was really it's a small thing, but it was so satisfying to me that you had these two trains of thought simultaneously working together.
In very different directions on very
Oh
different
yeah,
tracks there.
yes.
And that's where we start seeing more of the sitcom, especially that we're used to nowadays.
Mm-hmm. It's
More
very
of
smart.
more of that. I guess maybe I Love Lucy did a lot of that too, where it was the misunderstanding, a
Yes.
slight misunderstanding, and then two people do the same thing, just slightly off.
I Love Lucy was so good for that. I will say, like, I think the biggest thing I remember from I Love Lucy is the physical comedy, but it was very smart and clever. And like, it would take this one thing and it would like this Rube Goldberg turn into this a million things.
And that's actually what I just thought about is that this show we're watching right now, The Addams Family, is not very physical at this point.
Mm-mm.
We see so we don't see a lot of pratfalls, we don't see a lot of zaniness in that way, and it seems very sedate compared to what you'd expect.
It does. But because it has that spooky background, I guess we don't realize.
Yeah, it's like and nothing pops out at you. You know that there's no scary things. It's just weird.
Yeah, the worst thing I think that happens in that context is Cleopatra if she eats a
Yes,
guy.
that's fine. That's wholesome. Circle of life.
But that's like it. Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought of that. It is a lot more subdued. It is focused on the conversation
Yeah, and it's like being in an unusual situation and in and out. The visitors come by and misinterpret things. They misinterpret things, and
because the set does so much to set up everything.
yes, and there's so much movement. There's so much activity happening. There's always somebody walking around. You're going to see Grandma show up sometime. You're going to see Uncle Fester, or you're going to see somebody just sitting there or playing the harpsichord as usual.
One of my favorites is always the episodes that they have the trampoline in the middle of the living room. As a kid, I was like, these people are my favorite. They are brilliant.
I wanted to play with all of the suits of armor and all the gear and
Oh,
just
hell
play with
yeah.
that stuff when I was a kid.
And the thing about the trampoline is that it's Gomez's favorite thing. It's not even the kids. We talk about his passion, but the other thing is that he never loses his sense of joy or wonder. And like that is a grown ass man jumping on a trampoline because it's his favorite thing.
I mean, it's a trampoline.
Yeah. How could it not be fun?
And I think that's what I kind of picked up on the idea of Gomez talking to his son about the scouts.
Hmm.
He actually seems like he's okay. I'll try and actually be interested and not just humor him.
Right.
That's really sweet.
The whole thing is just so sweet. I love it. It was a great
It's
episode.
it's something I really picked up a little bit when I watched this time. I was like, I got to try and do better myself when it comes
Hmm.
to someone showing me this thing, this new song or newfangled new cartoon on the internets they talk about,
Yeah,
and maybe let's give it a shot, see how it is.
you're right. I think about that too because I think for so long I've had to almost become defensive on protecting the things I love because they're not they tend to be outlier things compared to
Right.
what other people like. And I've had to I've protected and feel defensive of it.
Oh,
And
sure.
and so the reverse then when other people try to show me things, I've already made up my mind, which is unfortunate because I'm like, no, I like these things, right? And you're right. I could stand to be like, well, I might like that too. I should give it an honest chance.
And again, that goes right into what Morticia and Gomez is. Well, I guess we're gonna have to learn to love him like this. Give it a
Mm-hmm.
chance. And that feels really refreshing. Of
It
course, they
does.
successfully get rid of all those evil baseballs and camping stuff. Ugh.
Yeah. And I do like that, like, it showed that they were uncomfortable. It's not like they were, okay, this is easy. It wasn't easy, but they knew it was the right thing to do.
Right. And that's again relates in real life really easily.
Yep.
And I
This
hope
is,
that that's kind of a message that did get through to some
mm-hmm.
people. Again, very Dr. Spock. Right back to that.
Yep. It's such a strong episode. And you're right. For being episode number two, this is great. I think, I hope that this show had more subtle influence on people than they realized.
Yeah, I mean, maybe imagine these kids being listened to for 5 minutes.
Hmm. And they're going to keep hitting that theme that they just listen to each other for the whole three seasons. And I wonder if I would like to say that this show probably did a lot of little good for, very traditional conservative.
I think it did. I feel that the loving family is something we should all just enjoy rather than mock.
Hmm. Yeah, this is the show that we definitely needed when, like we talked about, you have the honeymooners on the opposite end,
Yeah,
or these like rigid, you know, two kid or was it 2.5 kids, white picket fence families.
the nuclear family. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, this is this was necessary, and it makes sense. It happened in the '60s. We could probably go into this whole discussion of politics and that, but it's just a beautiful thing. A very solid episode.
I think the reason they keep bringing it back is because we can always use another Addams family. We can always use the Addams to come and remind us how good we could be.
Hmm. It's kind of like the same with Mr. Rogers.
Oh my
We
yes.
always need a Mr. Rogers.
And Mr. Rogers and Gomez would get along great. I want to see this movie now.
Beautifully. Oh, that would because they both have such passion, they both have such love and compassion and tolerance. It'd be such a beautiful match. You could
Gomez
see,
crashes the trolley.
oh my God. And Mr. Rogers being like, oh, that's interesting, and like having a good laugh about it. He'd probably use Fester's light bulb trick to light up something with the puppets.
Teach everybody like electricity today.
Yeah, perfect. They tour their house like it's a museum instead of the crayon factory.
Oh, but I love the Crayon Factory.
I The crayon factory is such like this epic episode of Mr. Rogers for me.
It really is.
Everyone knows the crayon
It's
factory
generational.
episode. Yes. Where were you when you first saw the crayon factory episode? I mean, probably in front of the TV, obviously.
Usually.
Yeah.
Do the Adams have a TV at this point?
No, I can think of 2 points where they purposely bring in a TV to watch it for
Right.
the plot, but otherwise, I don't see one in there ever.
I was just thinking about that. That fourth wall is just pretty empty,
And that's yeah, so they're always cultivating their hobby or doing free play.
which I think is just as valuable.
Yep, it's also
So
very cool. What a family!
we can all hope to be as nice as the Adams.
It's a great goal, especially these days. That's all I got.
Yeah, it's about what I got. I went through most of my notes. I was really proud of my note for the train
Yes,
explosion.
that's
I
a
was
good
like, wait a
catch.
minute.
And that's a mummy wrap. Thank you for listening. You can find us online at Blue Sky at You Rang Addams. Remember, there are 2 D's in Addams. And our email is yourangaf@gmail.com. Until next time, stay all together, ookie fiends.